Hey, this is Oliver for Tutorialpilot, and we have another very interesting tutorial. We will do some realistic fluid rendering. We will render that in Redshift and simulate with xParticles, and we will compose this together later in Aftereffects. So let's jump in. First, let me close this. No, I don't want to save that. And we start from scratch, new. We need a box. First of all, I go to so and up to here. And I want to have straight numbers, 110, 300, 120, and go to the display and make it only lines so I can see inside of the cube. And I go to Insedium, xParticles, XP system. I go to my emitter and will rotate that by 90 degrees. And then we'll go to my cube and we'll rotate that also, let's say 25% is fine. I go back to my emitter and let's see what we have so far. We are emitting particles, which is quite fine. And I go back. And the next is on the cube, right click, go to extensions, Insedium tags, and put in an XP collider tag and make it collide not outside but inside. Okay, the rest we leave it as it is and see what we have. Now it's colliding inside. Very good. Let me extend the timeline by 300 and we go back. We'd like to have a fluid simulation, so we go with Nexus. If you don't want to use Nexus, why shouldn't you use Nexus? But if so, you can use the dynamics and you can use the XP fluid FX. That will have the same, closely the same behavior, but we will pipe a lot particles, so we use the Nexus, we go to choose object and we use the NX fluids. Make sure that you have the SPH and the liquid selected, and let's have a look. That looks much more organic. That's right. You see one thing in the simulation I will tell you, we will not go into detailed simulation settings, but this one is very important, especially for fluids. You see all the gaps between those particles, and this is because the particles have a size of 3 centimeters. You see that in the XP emitter. Under the emission tab, you will see the radius is 3 centimeters. And to showcase the radius, you can go to your display settings. And you have here the edit the display squares, and everything under box shows you the original size if you resimulate. So let's take spheres. I go back and resimulate, and now you will see I have all the original sizes of spheres, and now you see why we have those gaps in. Okay, let me go back to we have squares, I think. Squares, let me see. Yeah, squares looks good. So we need a lot particles to get a very cool and good mesh for the mesher. And for that, we go here into the emission tab and we'll decrease the radius to 1 centimeter. And let's resimulate that. This is what we have now. That looks better. There's not so much gaps between those particles. And you can increase the size, of course, or not increase, but decrease the size, of course, to get a much higher resolution mesh. But for this thing, it fits. So what we will do next is increase the birth rate up to 10,000. Okay, so let's have a look how this looks now. We have much more particles. We have a pressure particles pushing. Here we got this here, and now you see we don't have any gravity in. So let's fix that. Go to modifiers, motion modifiers, and go to XP gravity and bring this down to, let's say, 150. I think that should make it. So here we go. Everything's pushing. We got this little wave here. This is fine for me. Let me stop emitting the particles on frame 180. So I go to my XP emitter I go to my emission, of course, emit all the frames, uncheck that. We start on frame 0 and we end on frame 180. Okay, and we need for the final simulation 35,000 particles. Let's have a look. Yeah, we got a very cool splash. Maybe this is a bit too much here, but let's leave it as it is. Let's leave it. You can play with the radius settings of the particles. I mean, let me showcase you that. If you decrease this to 0.7 or so, you will see a complete other behavior. So the particle stays, but the gap is much smaller and you get this wave coming down here. So you can control all the things between birth and radius. Let's go back to 1, or let's try 0.9. It was a hell of a splash. Let me resim that. Yeah, it's cool. We got this wave roll here going on. And then we stop emitting and everything comes together. Perfect. So what we need is we need color information for the rendering later on. So we go to the XP emitter, to the display settings, and there we have a color mode, which is single color, and you change that to a gradient parameter, and then you have here the parameter which is controlling the age. So the color of the particles is controlled over the age of the particle. We don't want that. We like to control the speed of the particles. Okay, so now if you hit play, and you will see everything which is fast is white, and if they start slowing down, they get blue. Okay, so we need a bit less white, a bit more blue. So let's bring this up to here, or let's hold on, let's play with the min-max speed. So max, you can increase that. Hold on, and do not forget to re-simulate that. This is too high. Let's try 300, and then you see the changes if they're re-simulate. So we have here a high speed, and then it slows down and all the way down. That looks good so far. I think we can go with that. Yeah, that's fine. Here we have the most of speed. Here it slows down. Let me bit more to the left side. So let's say the max to 250. Let's have a look how this will looks like. That's better. So we have a bit of white particles here coming over. That's cool. That's good. I like that. So we have to change the color because we need black and white colors. So I go to here and change the color to black. Okay. Here some kind of dark grayish, something around here. And here's some kind of light grayish. Something about this. And if you re-simulate that, you will have white to black. And you see all the detailed here. Here comes the splash, and that's perfect. I like that. That's what it should look like. Okay, so now before we cache everything, we have a look at the mesh. Stop it something around here. So you have the splash here, so you have a good idea how the mesh will look like. You go to generators and choose an OpenVDB mesher. And here you pipe in your XP emitter, and voila! You have a Facebook message and you have a mesh. And to control the mesh is quite easy. Let me uncheck the cube so that we don't see them, and go to display, constant shading line. So this is the mesh we have. It's a very low poly mesh. And to get rid of this, you can decrease the voxel size. I will go to 1. It should be more than enough. And I will go to the point radius. You have here, this is the radius controlling each particle point. I go back to display and lights. You see this is a particle, and this is all the way it goes with the mesh as a distance to each particle. So 10 is quite high. Go back to constant shading lines, and I will decrease this to 2. That looks good. Maybe for the mesh we like to have 3, so you have more density here. Even 4. Let's try this. If you go for a much higher amount of particles, you will have a much better result of this mesh here. For example, if you go, let me uncheck this so that you see that. Let me go to my XP emitter and push this a bit to the limit. So we go with a birth rate of 70,000 and the radius of 0.7. And let's have a look. Go back and resim that. Ah, of course, we have no cube in there. Here we go. And I just go to display lights. Here we go. Let's see. They're too big, 0.6. This is a quite dense mesh, but let's go up to 90,000. Yeah, like that. And now if you switch on the OpenVDB mesh, you see you get a much better result of all of this. Okay? And what you have in the VDB mesher, you have these parameters, the radius, let's bring us to 2, and you will see you will have here an extremely cool surface. And what we do is we go here to the filter section and switch on the filters to relax all of this. And you have the median, and you can bring them to a width of up to 3. Let's have a look at this. What this will do. That's amazing what you get for details here in relaxation, but we lose all the information here of this particle. So we have to go back to the general settings and bring the point radius back up to, let's try 3. Much better, but I think 4 is the way to go. And that looks also amazing. We have a dense mesh. We have all particles in, we have a very organic splash here, and this is what I like to cache. So to do so, I go to Utilities and use the XP cache, choose a destination folder, cache, and then let the magic do. Build cache. I pause the video and I'll be right back. Dun 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 dun. No, just kidding. So here we go, the last few seconds. As you see, it took approx 5 minutes to do the caching. And we will have a look how this will look like in a second. Less than a second. And here we go. So let's have a look. This is how the simulation looks like. This is very cool. And let's come to the fun part. Let's come to the render settings and the material settings and all that stuff. So first of all, what I like to have is a plane in the background. So I go here and make a plane. I will rotate that by 90 degrees. 90, and push this. Let me see. Oops. I will push that bit to the back, and of course increase the width and the height. And I like to have a light. Let's go here to have area light all the way down. I just have to look if my audio is recording. So this is a hell of a software I have used for making the audio. So I bring this up to here, rotate that a little bit, go to the top view. Here we go. Let's arrange that something around here so we have the light from this side, and I make a copy string and then drag this over, and we'll rotate that the other way around. And let's see, let's push it to here, and let's go to here and start with a blank material. So I go to the material editor, go to plus, make a new standard material. You can also go to create materials, new standard. And if you're not on the latest version, go to Redshift, make a Redshift material. So push this, bring this onto here. And let's go to the RT render view. Let's see what we have now. Let me shrink this down a bit. So we have a cube we don't like to have. So let's get rid of the cube. We have a material and we have too much light in the scene. So let's go to the lights, down to 30, bit warmish color, like so, from the right, and a bit this one down to 30 again also, so we have reflections going on there. We have this here, good shaded, it's cool, and the color, a bit of the opposite, some kind of this one here, just a touch to give him some color. Let me go a bit less, something, just a touch. Okay, to have the water material, this is quite easy in Redshift. You simply double click on the material and you go to your RS standard material, go all the way down to the transmission and just crank the white up, and here we go. You have water, which looks cool. There's nothing more to do, just playing around with the reflections or whatever, but you have a very cool water. And what we like to adjust is the light, of course, because we have a bit too much light in the scene. Let's see, let's have a look. Let's bring this a bit apart and a bit over there. Just a touch. So that looks very, very cool. So let's render this. This will be the setting. You render the whole animation with the background, with all the stuff you have in, with all the camera motion. This is what you render. I will simply render one frame so we can see that later, how to compose this together, because we need 3 more passes and a lot of fun things to do. So let's render this with the render picture view. Let me render this. I use half HD for rendering just to save time. As you see, 1, 2, 3, ready to go. Let me save this file, save image as JPEG for now to showcase you that. That's fine. Water sim renders, and this is the water. Perfect. And let's come over to the particles. I like to render the particles as a second pass to make some kind of fake form, and this is where the color channel of the particles comes in place. So we unhide the open VDB measure and we go to the XP emitter, right click on that and go to render tags and go to RS object, and this gives you this particle thing, and you can enable that and say clear instances. Okay, and if you have switched on your RT render view, if you have not closed it like I do, then you will see now the particles. Here we go. That looks cool. And what we not need in this pass is anything around the particles. We need only the particles. So in this case, we only have the cube and the plane. So I uncheck the plane. So this is what I need to see. Okay. And to fake the form, I need way more smaller particles, okay? And I need to change the material because I like to have the material colors. Right now we have only the light colors, okay? So we go to the material editor, we make a new material, create material standard, and double click on that. And what we need is a node, and we need a custom color user data. So you put in date and you see color user data. This is what we need, this node. And in this node you have here the presets, and you can go to particles and particle color. Okay, and then you pipe this to showcase into the color, and then you see that you see nothing, but you see the change. Here you got more the whitish color, and here the blackish color. Okay, but we don't need that for the base color. We need this node somewhere else. Go to here, let it go, and then go to transmission color. So this is the transmission color, and then you click on this material and bring the transmission all the way up, the white to 1. Okay, so, and of course you see that you see nothing is because we have to apply the material to the XP emitter. Sorry for that, but here we go. Now you see this is the white particles. Here they are fast, here they slow down, and here they are moving. This is the fake form we like to have, and because of the transmission color, we like to pipe this into another thing, which is the emission color, because I like to have some fake emission. I go to and pipe this also to the color, and you can go to the emission tab. You see what happens here if I put this side by side. So I go to the emission tab, and let me increase this by 0.2, and you see this is what happened. So I got this particles here, and I got all the way here a bit of those particles. And you can also crank this up by doing a color correction and play with the gamma parameters to get more white over there. Okay, but for the fake form we need very, very small particles. So let me close this for now. This is the material we need, and we go to the Redshift settings, and we shrink down the scale multiplier to 0.2. And now you got the idea. This will be the form. Okay, and to get a really good form, you go to the render settings, you go to the Redshift settings, advanced, motion blur, enable the motion blur, go to movie and give him 720-degree angle. And you see in the RT nothing happens because this is rendered only in the picture view, and so let's render this, then you see what I mean. And this is our form, our fake form. That looks cool. And we will compose this in After Effects later on. But if you like to have more whites here, you can play with the emitter. Not the emitter, but the emission. So you can increase the emission. I like to have a bit more whites here. It's too dark here for my meaning. So I go to the material and go to the emission and bring this up to 0.3 and render again. That looks better. I got more whites here. That looks very, very cool. Let me save this. File, save image as, okay, form. And what we need at least are air bubbles. Okay, I go back to my RT view. We need the material in a second. Here's my RT view, and let me close the render settings. And you can use the same material, so you don't have to switch it. We have to adjust a few settings for the air bubbles, but let me showcase you that. You go to the XP RT settings, and we bring the particle size back up to 1. So we have this huge amount of particles here, the huge size. And what we need is, let me duplicate this string. Oh, this is too much. Only this user data. We'll copy that. And I need an invert. I need to invert that. Color invert. Pipe this into here, and this one goes into the transmission color. And you will see it switches. Okay, we have too much emission for that, so I go to the emission tab and bring this down to 0.1 or so, because I really want to have this here. Maybe let's go even more. Let's switch this off. So no emission here. So I only like to have the air bubbles here, and that's okay, because here the water falls down. Here it gets speed, it gets little form, and then it crashes into this wave. And the slower the particles, the water flow is, the more you get those air bubbles, and they will come up. Okay, so this is the third pass. You have to render all the settings, and I will do so. I render this now. Even with the high amount of motion blur, you can do so, because here everything's moving very slowly, and you see what only the particles get as an effect here of the air bubbles. That looks amazing. Okay, so let me save that. File, save image as, okay, air. And what you can do, if you have enough render power and render time, you can pipe this not in the transmission color, but into the opacity channel. And if you do this, you will have additional in the opacity channel. Sorry. And if you do this, you'll see this is your alpha channel, and you have a hell of a result, but it took a hell of render time. So you can use also the opacity channel with the user data. That's why we choose black and white. But it is a render time killer. Okay? So the last thing we need to get the final result is the cube. And we need another thing. But let's go here with the cube. And no emitter, no mesh. We need the same material as for the mesh. To the cube, hit render. We need the background. Here we go. Yeah, plane is there. That's the cube. Let me save that file. Save image as, okay, and say cube. And we go over to After Effects. Let me fire up After Effects. I pause. Back again. Double click. Bring in the footage. Bring in the footage, sorry. Tutorials, renders, here we go. We bring in the footage, import. So the first thing we need is the cube. Here we go. The next thing, which is on top of that, is the water. And we do simply do a hard light to mix that together. Here we go. So this is what we have. And you see, it looks good, but they're missing some details. You can, of course, color correct that by choosing here on the cube some curves. Everybody loves curves, so let's see. We'll dark this a bit. Here we go, on the edges a bit lighter, so that's fine. Okay, so this is the first thing. The next is we come over with the form. Okay, and this will be this will be an add. Okay, you see the difference without? You got all these little air fake forms here, and you can color correct that again with some curves. Let me go to the reddish channel bit of reddish. You see, this is the form, a bit of reddish, and let's go to the green and give him a bit so that it fits better. Oh, that's too much. Too much, too much, too much. Just a touch. Okay. And you can go with the overall RGB to darken or lighten that. So you got the control over that. So this is some very cool details. And now the last thing is you need the air bubbles, and the also go to add. And now you see, let me bring this air bubbles a bit transparency down. Here we go. So this is what it looks with all the passes, and that's only the water, and that's with all the extra details. Okay, this is only the air bubbles, with or without. And if you don't like the lights, you can of course go with the opacity much more down, so just to get some details, or you choose as a blend method soft light, which makes it also a bit darker. And you got the air. Do you see the little details here? Looks like little bubbles here. And the same for the form, so it's much more lighter. I did too much of the greenish here. That looks not so good. That's better. Let's push in some. That fits good. Okay, and maybe again here the opacity a bit down, so that we don't have so much going on there. So something around so. Yeah, that's it. Hope you like this. Hope you get some interesting tips, good tips. I mean, only if you only have the air bubbles here, that looks quite cool. If you go to add, I mean, this looks amazing. Okay, so if you have this much amount of particles, you can always go with the water and only these things. But don't forget, you need the mesh on top of that to give them the final touch. But hope there are some ideas how to render realistic liquids, not beer. Sure, not to render beer, because there you have a foam emitter in xParticles, and you have this foam on top of that. That won't work with this this solution, but for having a realistic water sim, this is the way you should go. And we have a new tutorial in progress. Let me showcase you that. If you stay with us so long, then maybe you like to see. Don't save that. Let me showcase you what we will do. We will do some ice effect here. Look at that. We will do some freezing things. No third-party plugins. Everything inside After Effects. Quite fast, especially with this lighting here. It's not finally done, but to get an idea what's the next coming up here on Tutorialpilot, we go into, oh, look at that. It's cool. We go into freezing times. See you in the next tutorial. My name is Oliver. Thank you. Bye. Oh, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Now we're done. Thank you. Bye. Ciao.